The front door opened at 4:17 a.m. Silently, as if the house already knew what he'd done. Victor Moretti stepped inside, loosening his tie, the scent of expensive perfume still clinging to his skin. Outside, the city of New York pulsed with life, cars humming, lights burning, but inside the mansion, everything felt dead. Too quiet. His eyes drifted to the living room. And that's when his heart stuttered. Elena was sitting on the floor. Not crying. Not screaming. Just sitting there in her thin silk robe, her knees pulled to her chest, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something inside that was already shattered. In front of her lay a single envelope. White. Neat. Untouched. Victor swallowed. Elena. She didn't look up. The silence pressed harder than any gun he'd ever faced. Victor Moretti was feared across the city, a mafia boss who ended men with a nod, who ruled with cold precision. But in that moment, standing barefoot in his own home, he felt like a stranger. Elena finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "I waited," she said. Victor's chest tightened. "I waited until the city slept. Until the lies were tired." A pause. "Until you came home smelling like someone else." His breath caught. She slowly reached for the envelope and slid it toward him across the marble floor. Divorce papers. Signed. Dated. Final. Victor dropped to his knees without realizing it. "Elena, please." She stood up then. And that's when he saw it. Her eyes weren't angry. They were empty. "You cheated all night," she whispered, her voice trembling for the first time. "And now, I'm finally leaving." She walked past him. Victor reached out. Too late. The door to their bedroom closed with a quiet click. And in that moment, the most powerful man in the city realized something terrifying. He was about to lose the only woman who ever loved him. And he didn't even know why she stayed as long as she did. Backhand index pointing eye question for you watching right now. If you were Elena, would you forgive him or walk away forever? Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I have missed you all. Missed all the experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride as we're currently battling some technical issues, but trust me, we're getting everything back and running. So stick around, I need your support on YouTube now more than ever. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. Victor Moretti didn't sleep that morning. He sat alone in the dark living room long after Elena's bedroom door stayed shut, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands trembling, hands that had pulled triggers without hesitation, hands that had signed death warrants with a pen. But now, they shook because of a woman who once waited up for him every night. The first light of dawn crept through the tall windows, painting the walls in pale gold. It reminded him of the mornings Elena used to wake him with coffee and quiet smiles, careful not to disturb the man she knew carried the weight of violence on his shoulders. She used to say, "The world already fears you enough. Let me be the place you rest." Victor pressed his eyes shut. He hadn't deserved that mercy. Elena hadn't always been this quiet woman with hollow eyes. Once, she laughed easily. Once, she believed love could soften even the hardest men. She met Victor before the city knew his name, before the empire, before the blood. He was just a man then. Dangerous, yes. Ambitious. But human. And she loved him anyway. When his enemies came, she stood behind him. When the nights grew longer and darker, she waited. When the rumors started, whispers of women, clubs, late-night meetings, she told herself lies just to survive. He'll come home. He always does. I'm different. But nights like this one had been happening more often. Too often. Victor stood and walked slowly toward the bedroom door. He stopped inches away, his knuckles hovering in the air. He remembered the first time she cried because of him. It had been years ago. He'd sworn that night on his power, his empire, his very life, that he would never be the reason her eyes lost their light. And yet here they were. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the framed photo on her nightstand. Their wedding day. Victor in a tailored black suit. Her in white, smiling like she'd just won the world. Her fingers brushed the glass. "Why wasn't I enough?" she whispered to no one. She hadn't screamed when she smelled the perfume. She hadn't thrown things or demanded explanations. Because the truth had already exhausted her. She had waited for Victor to choose her. Night after night. Lie after lie. And tonight, she finally chose herself. Tears slipped down her face, not loud, not dramatic, just silent, defeated tears that came from loving someone too deeply for too long. Victor slid down the wall outside the bedroom, his back hitting the cold marble. He covered his face. For the first time in his life, Victor Moretti prayed. Not for power. Not for protection. But for forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. And somewhere deep inside, a terrifying thought surfaced. What if this wasn't the night he lost his wife? But the night he discovered a secret Elena had been hiding for years? Backhand index pointing right. Let me ask you watching right now. How many chances does love deserve before it breaks forever? Victor heard it before he saw it. Paper. Soft. Final. The sound came from inside the bedroom. He stood up slowly, his heart pounding harder than it ever had during a gunfight. His instincts, honed by years of ambushes and betrayals, screamed that something irreversible was happening on the other side of that door. "Elena," he said quietly. No answer. He pushed the door open. Elena stood by the dresser, her back to him. Her shoulders were straight, but the tension in her spine told him everything. On the bed lay an envelope. White. Clean. Untouched by emotion. Except for the words written across the front in her handwriting. Victor froze. The room tilted. For a second, the king of the city, the man whose name made grown men tremble, forgot how to breathe. "What is this?" he asked, though his voice already knew. Elena turned. Her eyes met his. And that was when Victor realized the most terrifying truth of all. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She was calm. "I'm done waiting," she said softly. 3 words. They hit harder than any bullet ever had. Victor took a step toward her. "Elena, last night." "Don't," she interrupted. Her voice cracked, not loud, not dramatic, but broken in a way that made his chest ache. "You always explain," she continued. "And I always forgive. But forgiveness isn't love if it keeps killing you." She picked up the envelope. "I didn't make this decision last night," she said. "I made it years ago. I just didn't have the strength to admit it." Victor shook his head. "You don't understand what you're doing." She gave a sad smile. "I understand perfectly. I stayed with a man who came home smelling like another woman, and still defended him to the world. That was when Victor saw it. The faint tremor in her hand. She wasn't cold. She was terrified. Elena hesitated, then reached into the drawer and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. She placed it on the bed, unwrapped it. Victor's breath caught. A small ultrasound photo. Old. Faded at the edges. His heart slammed against his ribs. "What is that?" he whispered. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's the reason I stayed longer than I should have." Victor's knees nearly buckled. "You were pregnant?" he asked. She nodded. "Years ago," she said. "When you were building your empire. When you said you needed time." His mind raced. What happened? Elena swallowed hard. "I lost the baby," she said. "Alone. In a hospital room where no one knew my name." Victor staggered back. The world he knew shattered. "And you didn't tell me?" he asked, his voice breaking. She looked at him with eyes full of pain and love and exhaustion. "You were busy choosing everything else." Backhand index pointing. I paused for a moment. "If you were her, would you have stayed?" Victor dropped to his knees. "I would have changed," he whispered. "I swear I would have." Elena stepped back. "That's the problem," she said. "You always swear after the damage is done." She slid the papers toward him. "I'm not asking you to beg," she said gently. "I'm asking you to let me go." But Victor saw something else now. Something hidden beneath her calm. Fear. Not of him, but of what she hadn't told him yet. And as she turned toward the door, Victor realized this wasn't just a divorce. This was the beginning of a reckoning that would tear his empire and his heart apart. Victor stayed on his knees long after Elena walked past him. The bedroom door didn't slam. It closed gently. And somehow, that hurt more. He stared at the ultrasound photo still lying on the bed, its edges curled with age, its surface faintly smudged like it had been touched too many times by trembling fingers. She had carried his child. And buried that pain alone. The house suddenly felt wrong. Too large. Too quiet. Too full of secrets that had learned how to hide. Victor stood slowly. For the first time, he didn't feel like a king in his own mansion. He felt like an intruder. He walked down the hallway toward his private office. As he passed the guest wing, something caught his attention. A door. Slightly open. That door was never open. Victor paused. Instinct, sharp, unforgiving, rose in his chest. Inside the room, a lamp glowed dimly. He stepped in. And froze. On the desk sat a second phone. Not Elena's. Not his. It was sleek. Expensive. Recently used. Victor picked it up. No lock. As if whoever owned it never expected to be discovered. Messages filled the screen. Dates. Times. Names. And one phrase repeated over and over again. "He doesn't suspect anything." Victor's jaw tightened. He scrolled. Photos appeared. Not of Elena. Of his house. His schedule. His movements. His blind spots. Someone had been watching him. From inside his own home. A familiar name appeared. One he trusted. One he'd protected for years. Victor's chest constricted. "No," he whispered. But the truth didn't care. The timestamps aligned perfectly with nights Elena had begged him to come home earlier. Nights he'd chosen power and pleasure over her. While he was distracted, someone else had been using his absence. Using Elena's silence. Using his arrogance. Victor suddenly understood something chilling. Elena hadn't just been abandoned by her husband. She had been surrounded by enemies pretending to be family. Elena stood by the window in the bedroom, watching the city wake. She pressed a hand against her chest as if to quiet the ache. She hadn't told Victor everything. Not yet. Because if she did, the war would begin. And it would be bloody. She whispered to herself, tears slipping free at last. I tried to protect you, even when you stopped protecting me. Victor crushed the phone in his fist. His voice dropped, dangerously calm. So that's how you broke her, he murmured. This wasn't just betrayal. It was manipulation. Calculated. Slow. Cruel. And suddenly, the cheating, the distance, the cracks in his marriage, they weren't accidents. They were engineered. Victor Moretti straightened. The pain in his chest didn't disappear, but it hardened, turned sharp, turned lethal. And one thought thundered through his mind. If Elena leaves this house without the truth, she will never be safe. Backhand index pointing right. Let me ask you watching right now. If you discovered your heartbreak was planned, would you still walk away or fight back? Victor didn't sleep. The sun rose, but it felt like the world was sinking deeper into darkness. By dawn, every man he trusted was already working. Quietly. Efficiently. Ruthlessly. Because when a Moretti investigates, the city holds its breath. The phone from the guest room lay dismantled on Victor's desk. Around it, documents, surveillance stills, financial trails. Victor stood with his hands on the desk, shoulders tense, eyes burning. Say it, he ordered softly. Luca hesitated. That hesitation told Victor everything. Boss, Luca swallowed. The messages weren't just surveillance. Victor's jaw flexed. They were instructions. Silence. Then, the person giving them is someone you know well. Victor didn't move. Didn't blink. Name. Luca's voice cracked. Adriana. The room seemed to tilt. Victor felt it physically, like the floor dropped beneath him. Adriana. His cousin. The woman who'd grown up in this house. The woman Elena had defended more than once. The woman Elena had trusted when Victor wasn't there. No, Victor said quietly. But Luca pushed the file forward. Photos. Bank transfers. Recorded calls. Adriana's voice, sweet, calm, patient. She's fragile, Adriana said in one recording. Push slowly. Let him think he's the problem. Let her feel alone. Victor's chest burned. Another clip played. If she loses the baby, Adriana continued coldly, she'll finally leave. And when she does, the house is ours. Victor slammed his fist into the desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Victor's breathing grew heavy. She encouraged it, he said hoarsely. Yes, Luca replied. She arranged the parties. The girls. The distractions. Victor staggered back, gripping the chair. His infidelity, his greatest shame, had been weaponized. Used to isolate Elena. Used to break her spirit. Used to make her miscarry, alone. And the worst part? Elena had blamed herself. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Adriana's voice echoed in her mind. Men like Victor don't change. You're too sensitive. Stress harms the baby, try not to cry. Elena pressed her hand to her mouth as the truth clicked into place. The nausea. The loneliness. The pressure to be silent. It hadn't been fate. It had been strategy. A sob tore from her chest. I trusted you, she whispered. Victor paced like a caged animal. She wanted control, he muttered. Of the house. The empire. And Elena, Luca added quietly. Elena was the obstacle. Victor stopped. Slowly turned. No, he said. Elena was the target. Because Elena had something Adriana never would. His loyalty. His heart. His future. Victor grabbed his phone and dialed. Elena answered on the second ring. Her voice was tired. Guarded. Yes. Elena, Victor said, voice breaking for the first time in years. I know who destroyed us. Silence. Then, tell me, she whispered. It wasn't you, he said. It was never you. Her breath hitched. And the baby? She asked, barely audible. Victor closed his eyes. I failed you, he said. But I swear on everything I am, no one will ever touch you again. Tears streamed down Elena's face. Not relief. Not yet. Because love didn't erase damage. And forgiveness wasn't guaranteed. Question for you watching. If the person who broke your marriage was family, could you ever trust again? Victor ended the call and stood there, phone pressed to his ear long after Elena had hung up. She hadn't said she believed him. She hadn't said she would stay. That silence was louder than screaming. He moved fast after that, too fast for regret. Elena is leaving, he said to Luca. Find her. Luca hesitated. Boss. She turned off her phone. Victor's chest tightened. Elena didn't turn off her phone. She disappeared. Elena walked through the early morning crowd with a single suitcase and her coat pulled tight around her body. Every step felt like betrayal. Every breath felt stolen. Victor's words echoed in her head. It wasn't you. It was never you. But pain had trained her not to trust apologies that came too late. She touched her stomach without realizing it. Empty. The place where hope once lived. She had stayed after the miscarriage because she believed love could survive neglect. Now she knew something worse than neglect had been at work. And still, she was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of bleeding quietly. At the bus terminal, she bought a ticket under a name that wasn't hers. Far enough. Anywhere. She didn't notice the man watching her from across the street. Victor stormed through the house like a ghost. Her closet half empty. Her jewelry gone except for the ring she never wore anymore. The bed cold. His heart collapsed in on itself. She thinks running will save her, he whispered. Luca looked uneasy. Boss. Adriana's men are moving. Victor's head snapped up. She's not done, Luca continued. Elena disappearing makes her vulnerable. Victor's blood ran cold. For the first time, the danger wasn't theoretical. It was immediate. Elena sat near the back of the bus, forehead pressed to the glass as the city blurred away. Her tears came silently. She thought of the girl she used to be. The woman who believed marriage meant safety. She thought of Victor on his knees in the bedroom. Of his voice when he said the baby's name for the first time. Her chest ached. She almost turned back. Almost. That was when the bus slowed. Too suddenly. A man stood in the aisle. Smiling. Elena Moretti, he said softly. Your family misses you. Her blood turned to ice. Victor received the call 10 minutes later. Short. Calm. Cruel. She's with us now, Adriana's voice purred. Come alone if you want her alive. The phone went dead. Victor didn't scream. Didn't curse. He closed his eyes once. Then he whispered something that chilled everyone in the room. If I don't bring her home, no one walks out alive. If you were watching this right now, would you run to save the person who broke your heart? Or would you let fate take its course? Victor drove alone. No convoy. No guards. No second chances. The city blurred past him, but his mind was fixed on one image, Elena's face the last time she looked at him without warmth. He hadn't just lost her trust. He'd lost the right to protect her. And yet, here he was. The warehouse stood by the river, abandoned, rusted, forgotten by the city. Perfect for monsters. Victor stepped out of the car slowly, hands visible. The door screeched open before he could knock. They were waiting. Elena was tied to a chair beneath a single hanging bulb. Her wrists burned. Her throat ached from screaming earlier, screams no one answered. But the worst pain wasn't physical. It was the waiting. Every second she wondered if Victor would come. And every second after that, she hated herself for hoping. Adriana circled her like a cat. You still love him, Adriana said lightly. I can see it. Elena lifted her head, eyes glassy but defiant. You don't get to say his name. Adriana smiled. I get everything I want. She leaned in close, including watching him choose. Victor was pushed to his knees the moment he entered. Gun barrels pressed against his skull. Adriana sat across from him, legs crossed, elegant and cruel. Where is she? Victor asked. No greeting. Adriana sighed. After everything we've shared? I'll kill you, Victor said quietly. Adriana laughed. Eventually. But first, I want you to understand what loss feels like. She snapped her fingers. Elena was dragged into view. Her hair disheveled. Her face pale. Her eyes widened when she saw Victor. For one breathless second, the world stopped. Elena, Victor whispered. Her lips trembled. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Adriana stood between them. One bullet, she said. One decision. She placed a gun in Victor's hand. You can shoot me, Adriana continued. And my men will kill her before you stand. Or, she turned the barrel toward Elena. You can shoot her. And walk away alive. The room went silent. Victor's hand shook. Elena, he said hoarsely. Look at me. She shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. Don't. Her voice broke. I already lost the baby, she said. I can't watch you lose your soul too. His chest shattered. Tears burned his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. I was wrong, he said. About everything. Adriana rolled her eyes. Touching. Decide. Victor raised the gun. Everyone inhaled. He turned. And fired. The bullet shattered the chain above Elena. The light exploded. Chaos erupted. Victor lunged forward as the room filled with smoke and screams. Gunfire tore through the air. He wrapped his body around Elena, shielding her as they hit the floor. Run, he whispered urgently, cutting her ropes with shaking hands. Please. She stared at him. You're bleeding. I'll survive, he said. You won't if you stay. She hesitated. Then sirens wailed in the distance. Luca's voice shouted orders. Adriana screamed in rage. Victor pushed Elena toward the exit. She took 3 steps. Stopped. Turned back. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said through tears. His eyes softened. I know, he replied. Just live. She ran. Victor collapsed to one knee as the warehouse filled with flashing lights. Adriana was dragged past him, screaming his name like a curse. As the medics rushed in, Victor's vision blurred. The last thing he saw was Elena standing at the doorway, watching him, not leaving. If you were Elena, would you walk away forever? Or stay when love finally chooses you back? Victor woke to the sound of machines breathing for him. Each beep felt like a reminder that he was still here, and that staying alive wasn't the same as being forgiven. His body ached in places he couldn't name. His chest burned every time he inhaled. But the pain he searched for wasn't physical. Elena. The word left his lips before his eyes opened. Silence. Then soft movement. A chair scraped gently across the floor. She's sleeping, Luca said quietly. She hasn't left since they brought you in. Victor's throat tightened. Did she say anything? Luca hesitated. She asked if you were going to die. Victor exhaled shakily. And when I said no? She cried, Luca said. Not loud. Just the kind that doesn't stop. Elena sat by the window, knees pulled to her chest. The hospital gown hung loosely on her frame. Her hands rested protectively over her stomach out of habit. Even though there was nothing left to protect, grief had hollowed her out in ways Victor never saw before. When she finally stood and walked toward the bed, her steps were slow, careful, as if getting too close might hurt all over again. You should be resting, Victor whispered. She didn't answer. She stared at the scars on his arms. The 4 lines. The bruises. You could have died, she said. I almost did, he replied. Her jaw clenched. For her, she asked. No, he said immediately. For you. That made her flinch. I begged you, Elena said quietly. I begged you to choose me before it got this bad. Victor swallowed hard. I didn't know how, he admitted. I only knew how to protect with violence. She finally looked at him. And who protected me from you? The question cut deeper than any bullet. I can't erase what I did, Victor said. I can't undo the nights you cried alone. Tears welled in her eyes. I lost our baby while you were in another woman's bed, she whispered. I went through that pain alone. His vision blurred. I didn't deserve to be a father, he said. Or a husband. She reached for his hand, then pulled back. I don't know if love survives betrayal, she said. Victor nodded slowly. But I know regret survives everything. Days passed. Victor healed. Elena stayed. She didn't touch him. Didn't wear her ring. Didn't promise anything. But she stayed. And for a man who once owned the city, that was everything. One night, she stood at the foot of his bed. They're shutting your empire down, she said. Freezing accounts. Raids everywhere. He nodded. Good. She studied his face. You're not afraid? I lost the only thing that mattered, he said. Everything else is noise. She exhaled, shaky. If you walk away from this life, she said, there's no going back. Victor met her gaze. I don't want to go back. The day he was discharged, Elena packed one bag. Just one. I'm not coming back to the mansion, she said. I need space. Somewhere quiet. Victor nodded. I won't follow. She paused at the door. You can write, she said softly. I might read them. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was hope. That night, Victor stood alone on the balcony of an empty house. No guards. No weapons. No power. Just a man staring at a city that no longer feared him. His phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. She's awake. She asked for you. Victor's breath caught. And for the first time in his life, he was afraid of what came next. If love breaks once, can it ever be rebuilt without blood? Victor didn't sleep that night. He sat in the dark, the city glowing beneath him like a kingdom he no longer ruled. Every memory replayed in fragments: Elena's laughter when they were young, the way she used to trace circles on his chest when nightmares woke him, the silence that slowly replaced love. By dawn, he had written 3 letters. One to Luca, one to the men who still called him boss, and one to Elena. He didn't seal hers. He folded it carefully and slid it into his jacket pocket, unsure if he deserved to be read. The clinic was small, quiet, nothing like the hospitals he once owned through shell companies. Elena was sitting in the waiting room when he arrived. No makeup, no jewelry, just tired eyes and hands that trembled slightly. When she saw him, she didn't smile. But she didn't turn away either. "The doctor says I can leave today," she said. "That's good," Victor replied. A pause. "You don't have to walk me home." "I know." Another pause. "I want you to," she whispered. That almost broke him. They walked slowly through the morning streets. No bodyguards. No cars. Just 2 people carrying the weight of everything they used to be. "I still hear the baby cry sometimes," Elena said suddenly. "In my dreams." Victor stopped walking. She kept going for 2 steps, then turned back. "I know you didn't pull the trigger," she said. "But your choices put the gun in my life." He nodded, eyes burning. "I would trade every year I have left to hear that cry once," he said. Tears slid down her cheeks. "That's the first honest thing you've ever said to me." They reached her building. Small. Plain. Nothing like the mansion. She stood by the door, keys in hand. "This is where I heal," she said. "And I don't know if healing includes you." Victor took a step back. "If it doesn't," he said, "I'll still become someone worthy of having loved you." She searched his face. "For years," she said softly, "I thought your silence meant you didn't care." "It meant I was afraid," he replied. "Afraid that if I stopped being a monster, I'd have nothing left." She opened the door, then hesitated. "You can come in," she said. "Just for coffee." Victor didn't move. "You don't owe me kindness." She met his eyes. "I owe myself peace." Inside, the apartment smelled like jasmine and fresh paint. New beginnings. They sat across from each other in silence. Victor reached into his jacket and placed the folded letter on the table. "I wrote this last night," he said. "But you don't have to read it." Elena unfolded it slowly. Her lips trembled as she read. By the time she reached the end, her hands were shaking. "You didn't ask for forgiveness," she said. "I'm not entitled to it. You asked me to live, even if it's without you." He nodded. "That's love," she whispered. Tears finally fell. Not the broken kind. The healing kind. Weeks later, Victor testified. He gave up names, accounts, secrets. He didn't fight the sentence. He didn't ask for favors. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Victor looked at the gallery. Elena wasn't there. But he spoke anyway. "I spent my life taking," he said. "Today, I give back what I can." The gavel fell. 2 years later, Victor walked out a free man. Older. Quieter. Changed. There was no car waiting. Just an envelope. Inside was a single key. And an address. Elena stood in the doorway. Stronger now. Whole. I'm not promising forever, she said. I'm promising today. Victor nodded, tears blurring his vision. That's more than I deserve. She stepped aside. And, for the first time, he walked into a life he didn't have to destroy to feel powerful. Some men lose everything and blame the world. Others lose everything and finally learn how to love. Victor learned too late. But not too late to become human.